Zach Laws of Gold Derby here with the visual effects team behind The Lion King. And, you know, you guys, I know, Rob, you worked on The Jungle Book a few years ago, which certainly had a lot of, you know, heavy reliance on talking CGI animals. This one is, you know, completely that. So I have to wonder if this film was an even more daunting challenge than what you did in the Jungle Book with Jon Favreau.
Well, we actually all worked on The Jungle Book. Andy was in charge of the animation, and Elliot worked on the pipeline and the compositing and all that stuff. So we were the same sort of experienced team. We're taking what we learned and what we did on Jungle Book and now updating it to a certain degree of what we can do better, what we can do more realistically and things like that for the movie. So the challenge was converting that movie into a live action film when it was a theatrical experience and a totally animated experience. So the challenge was translating this piece of property, which is really quite something. It's really like the crown jewel of the Disney animation crown. That we really had to, you know, honor it and convert it into something that photorealism would lend itself to. So that was a huge challenge, and everybody upped their game. Andy's animation was was up to the point where you could absolutely believe those are real animals behaving the way they do, and all the rendering and work and compositing work and landscape work and by Ellie and Audrey and Adam Valdez, you know, to basically complete the illusion. And then we decided that we would film it in a very live action oriented way, that it felt like we could have photographed it conventionally, but still be beautiful and still, you know, look like a David Lean type film. So that was probably the biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about the ways in which you mentioned improving upon or taking to the next level what you did in the Jungle Book. Can you just dive in a little bit more about some of the techniques that you had to use in order to do that?
Yeah, you want to start with me, or do you want to start with Andy, or
any of you guys? Yeah, please.
All right. Well, our version of it is we knew that we could achieve photoreality. Now that we can achieve photoreality, now we want to really photograph it well, really cover it well, really experience it, and not violate the sort of live action methodology that you could see and feel in a live film that you don't necessarily see in a computer generated or animated film. So we upped our game by creating a virtual shooting environment that used all these same tools, a real dolly with real dolly grip, actually pushing the dolly, who's experienced artistically in moving a dolly, not just physically moving a thing from point A to point B. And then with a real camera operator, real director of photography, Caleb Deschanel, a real focus puller, all that stuff is all now manually operated to influence the way we would photograph it, and hence the way we'd cover it, then the way we'd edit it. And then Andy's, I'll turn it over to Andy, of doing so well in making photoreal characters that now they behave in such great nuance that you can't tell them apart from a real animal from an animal Andy animated.
I mean, for us, it was exactly what Rob's talking about, like trying to take what we learned from Jungle Book and pushing the performance, pushing the realism of skin movement, muscle movement, fur simulation, everything that I think we were kind of slightly, you know, we had pushed the envelope pretty far in Jungle Book, but I think there was room for improvement. And, you know, it's funny, as we start to look at the shots and look at what we're doing in Lion King, we look back at what we'd done on Jungle Book. We're like, wow, yeah, we weren't as far as we've done, you know, because Jungle Book felt like such an accomplishment, but then I think we definitely were upped it again with how much realism we were able to achieve with these, especially the bigger lions and kind of this kind of thin but loose skin feeling that lions really have is really hard to get in CG, and trying to make it look realistic, how they move, how they walk, all the performances, the facial movement, the fur, the whiskers, all the details, just trying to get them all right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to talk a little bit about the environment works. I think that was something that we were quite proud of. You know, we talked a lot about the differences between the environments on the Jungle Book and the environments on the Lion King being more about the big open spaces of the savannah. How are we going to do grass to the horizon? You know, is it going to be a mixture of matte paintings in the background, and then how do we extend those? How do we light those big worlds and obviously then integrate all of the lions in those scenes as well. So it was a lot of complexity and a huge technical thing for us to try and overcome. You know, since the Jungle Book, we developed a tool that we call scattering, which is a process of taking building a terrain and then having like little objects like leaves and twigs and stones that you basically sprinkle on the terrain, and that really helps to produce really detailed, rich environments. But because the worlds in The Lion King are so big, we had to develop another tool to help us manage the complexity, because you know, there was so many objects. You know, every blade of grass was geometrically modeled to be exactly how you would expect a blade of grass to look, even if it was a super close-up shot. And that same blade of grass would be replicated billions of times for the whole environment. So we had to work on a tool we call packs, which is a way of processing that data so that we could actually push it through a renderer, you know, because the data set was just so enormous that we could churn through it. So we're quite proud of, you know, the technical achievements on the environments, but I think it's true for every aspect of the production. You know, I don't think there's any part of it that lets any other part down. You know, I think that's something that we're proud of as well, is the consistency that we hit into the animation, the quality of the characters, the quality of the environment, the lighting, the compositing. You know, we all consciously said, like, everything's got to hit the same level, and that level was obviously very high. So we're quite proud of that too.
And even in the rigging of the animals, what Elliot was describing to me is that they had a thing where the muscles would actually collide with the skeleton underneath it and automatically produce a lifelike movement when Andy moved and animated for dramatic reasons. When it moved an arm or you know, leg or another part of the body, the muscle above it, the skeleton would react appropriately, and then you put the skin on top of that, then the hair on top of that, and then it responds to light exactly the way it would really be. All of a sudden, things just really came to life, and it was very difficult to distinguish between a real thing and a virtually created object.
Yeah, no, I mean, it absolutely is, you know, photorealistic. And I have to wonder, I mean, was there ever any kind of fear of going into uncanny valley territory with some of this stuff? I mean, how do you avoid something like that?
I mean, I think for us, that was something we're always struggling with, because you have talking animals, which automatically is putting you there, because animals don't talk. So, you know, I think some of our scenes where they're not talking, where you can just appreciate the beauty of the animal is interesting to me. But, you know, we knew that, you know, talking for John was a big thing. He didn't want people to be focusing on the mouth. So he's like, let's make the mouths move as naturalistic as possible. And just, you know, try and feel like, don't make them hit every phoneme perfectly, because it shouldn't feel like a human mouth. So basically, you know, he wants it to feel as animal as possible. Don't let us distract from that, and try and walk that line of, let's make this as real as possible, not cartoony in any way, because it does pull you into that uncanny valley. As soon as it moves in a cartoony way, it doesn't behave with physics the way we know it. All that sort of stuff just kind of pulls you out of the movie. So he's like, let's keep it as real as possible and try to engage with people on a more realistic level than a cartoony performance.
And I always thought that we can get there, and I never really put it again, because we saw early tests. We did one test with Rafiki that was very naturally photographed, and then they imitated the behavior so well that it became almost indistinguishable from real life. Like, well, we can do that now. We just have to, when we apply the acting and the drama to the scene, make sure we don't violate what the real animal can do, and we will never hit the uncanny valley, because the nuance was already built into the rigs and the environment and the camera and the lighting, and the behavior was very keenly observed by Andy and his team, so that, you know, unless they spoke, it's pretty much they do exactly what they do really good.
Yeah, a lot of the movement was realistic animal movement. So we really kind of studied, the animation team studied a lot of reference and could figure out what types of movements would work for certain performances, and let's try to integrate that into performance and hit those marks.
And a lot of the uncanny valley, the eyes, and if you really study the eyes in this particular thing, they're always moving and adjusting and darting and looking the way a real animal actually does. So you're not you're sucked into the fact that it looks like a sentient being is actually behind those eyes, and not an animated thing or a blank stare thing. which is the malady of uncanny valley.
Right. Anything you can add to that, Elliot, in terms of the environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, we were talking a bit before about you know, the performance and how the visual style of the movie, you know, being something so photorealistic, it requires a performance in that aspect to marry up with the visuals. And I think if we were to push the performance of the animals to be a little bit more stylized or cartoony, then I think we would have a different movie. You know, I think the fact that the environments and the fur and everything else just looks so real, it just wouldn't work if we were to have taken performance to that degree. And I think a lot of John's style was about, you know, you can still get an emotional reaction from watching a documentary. You know, you still feel for an animal being chased down, and you cover it in a certain way editorially with camera and with the right duration of shots and timing. So those aspects were really key for us to kind of get the story points across, so that you felt emotionally connected and you followed the story, but you also believe the visual you're seeing and everything kind of marries up and seen as one thing.
Right. You guys have mentioned Jon Favreau a number of times. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about working with him and what he gives you as a director that helps you do your best work.
Yeah, I really like working with John. Obviously, the second movie in a row with him, and I think because he's an actor director, you know, he really dives into performance. And he dives into, you know, giving really good animation notes. He's got an amazing eye for not just performance, but realism and visual effects. And you know, I think I'd mentioned before that to another person that he really doesn't like he told me in Jungle Book he really hated visual effects, and I think it's just because he hates when you feel it, when you can sense a visual effect is being done, and it pulls him out of the movie. So he really said that, you know, even I think on Jungle Book we had skies that, you know, he's like, just because you can put a beautiful sky in, you shouldn't. And he said if you showed up on the day and the sky was overcast, that's what you'd shoot, you know. And he's like, that's what I want out of these movies. He's like, just be careful with how beautiful you make it, how perfect you make it. It can start to feel like artifice. And, you know, I think with him, you know, that goes a long way with the characters as well and how they move. And he really had an eye for, you know, if something was moving and it felt animated or felt like somebody was pulling strings, he would tell us to keep working on it, make it feel better, make it feel more real. I'm not feeling enough emotion out of this performance, but so we were constantly walking that line of like give me more, you know, that emotion, but don't break it, don't make it feel animated.
Mm-hmm.
And the fun thing about John is not a micromanager like some people are. It's like, here's what I want, give me what I want, not what I asked for. Because what I asked for, I might not be able to articulate exactly how to do it, and that's what you should be doing. And then once you get that encouraged in you, you feel an obligation to come to the set with you know, a series of ideas that would embellish the moment, and he could then pick and choose which ones are useful for the story or the story he's telling. But the encouragement of it, which he gives to everybody, it's very collaborative. Yet he's still the final judge and jury if that idea works, but encourages you to make it so you actually do better work because you're asked to do better work. You're asked to come up with a better idea. And the fact that it may live is something that encourages you to continue to do it, as opposed to somebody, you give them a good idea and they don't use it. They don't use it after a while, you just stop doing it. Here you do, even to the last second on the digital intermediate when we're color timing the movie. There was a better way of depicting something. He's open to seeing it and then encouraging it. And that's what makes a good director from a bad director, somebody who takes advantage of the happy accident that you get from the collaboration of others, that you then say, no, I love that. Let me do that. And he did that with the actors too, encouraging them to improv certain lines and scenes and have them behave naturally, not try to imitate an animal or anything else. Just be yourselves, and then whatever comes out of the moment, if it's good, we're going to use it. And a lot of the lines between Seth and Billy Eichner were their own creation from feeling the character in the moment. And then Andy took advantage of it and animated to the new dialogue that they created.
Mm.
For me, I think what was great about working with John is obviously, we were a group coming from the Jungle Book, and that felt quite special. It's not really something that happens, is to kind of go into a second production with the same group again. And John's experience with visual effects, I think, really helped The Lion King, and understanding the type of notes to give, and understanding some of the kind of jargon that we talk about in our reviews, and just having that, I think, really just enabled us to cut to the chase and really just understand what we needed to do with certain scenes and shots. So I think that for me and for the team really helped us, because it really narrowed things down, and it was nice to actually hear that John wanted to understand the process, not just from a filmmaking point of view, but also from a technical point of view in terms of how we achieve something, so he can understand, okay, well, now I know that, I know how to direct you and how to give you a note. So that was really beneficial for us.
Right. Well, gentlemen, thank you all so much for your time. Congratulations on your work. It's truly remarkable what you've done with this film, and I look forward to seeing where you push visual effects next. It was a real pleasure talking with you.